He's prepping a Gulfstream G650 for a spontaneous trip to Aspen, Colorado.
Like the smartest person on the planet becomes the stupidest person on the flight deck.
And one of the Air Force's best-known flight test pilots has just set the pace for further research in...
Welcome to the Future in Flight podcast, coming to you from a hangar somewhere near the flight line, where the heater is nice and toasty and the muffins are fresh. I'm your host, Shawn Staerker, and today we've got an incredible episode packed with stories that'll make you laugh, learn, and maybe rethink what you thought you knew about aviation. First up, we're tackling one of the biggest career questions aspiring pilots face: airline or corporate? We're breaking down the lifestyle, the money, and what your day actually looks like in both worlds. Spoiler alert, there's no wrong answer, but there's definitely a right answer for you. Then, we're sitting down with author J.J. Madison to talk about his fantastic book, YIKES! 100 Smart Pilots and the Dumb Things They Did, Yet Live to Tell About Them. Trust me, these stories will definitely make you a better pilot, and they're funding flight scholarships while they're at it. And finally, we're firing up our time machine to explore the Bell X-1, the orange bullet that broke the sound barrier and proved that impossible is just a word waiting to be proven wrong. So buckle up, grab your headset, and let's get this show off the ground. Now, we're diving into one of the biggest questions aspiring pilots face. Do you want to fly corporate jets for private clients, or do you want to pilot large airliners full of passengers? It's not just about the aircraft you fly, it's about the life you build. So buckle up, because we're about to explore two very different paths to the same dream. Picture this. It's 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. In one corner, we have Captain Sarah, an airline pilot walking through a crowded airport terminal, rolling her bag towards Gate 32. She's flying a new Boeing 737 from Chicago to Denver, a route she's flown dozens of times. In the other corner, we have Captain Mike, a corporate pilot standing on a quiet tarmac at a small executive airport. He's prepping a Gulfstream G650 for a spontaneous trip to Aspen, Colorado. His passengers? A CEO and her team who decided yesterday afternoon they needed to be in Colorado by morning. Same profession, same training, more or less, completely different worlds. And here's what's wild. Both of these pilots are living their dream, just in totally different ways. Let's start with the most obvious question. What does a typical day actually look like? For airline pilots like Captain Sarah, the job is structured, predictable, and honestly pretty complex. You're flying scheduled routes under what's called Part 121 regulations. That means big jets, standardized procedures, and a whole team supporting you. You've got dispatchers planning your route, mechanics maintaining your aircraft, and gate agents handling passengers. Your job is to show up, conduct your pre-flight checks, coordinate with air traffic control, and fly the airplane safely from point A to point B. Now, that might sound routine, but don't let the word scheduled fool you. These pilots are managing incredibly sophisticated aircraft, navigating complex airspace, and making critical decisions in real time. And here's the kicker. They're doing it with hundreds of lives in their hands. The average airline pilot flies about 75 hours per month. But when you factor in pre-flight prep, briefings, and layovers, you're looking at a demanding schedule that requires some serious mental stamina.
Minneapolis information, Juliet, now current altimeter 3000.
Now, let's flip over to corporate aviation. Captain Mike's day looks nothing like that. Corporate pilots operate under Part 91 or Part 135 regulations, which means they're flying unscheduled trips for private clients. And they're not just pilots. They're logistics coordinators, customer service professionals, and sometimes even snowplow operators. Wait, what? Yeah, you heard that right. According to some pilots in the corporate world, there are days when you're literally clearing snow off a runway at a remote airport because your client needs to take off, and there's no ground crew to do it. You're handling customs paperwork for international flights, coordinating catering, managing fuel stops, and building personal relationships with your passengers. One pilot described it as being part aviator, part hospitality manager. You and your crew are the entire operation. So which lifestyle is better? Well, that depends on what you value. Airline pilots get predictability. You bid for your schedule months in advance, which means you know when you're working and when you're off. You've got guaranteed days off, union protections, and a clear path for advancement based on seniority. You might be flying the same routes repeatedly, but you're also building a stable life where you can plan vacations, attend your kids' soccer games, and know exactly when you'll be home. Corporate pilots? Their lives can be the opposite. You're on call. Your schedule can change at a moment's notice. One day you're flying to Miami. The next you're headed to Paris because your client just closed a major deal. It's exciting, unpredictable, and requires massive flexibility. But here's the trade-off. You get to fly into small, fascinating airports that airlines never touch. You might be staying at five-star hotels, experiencing different cultures, and you're building genuine relationships with your passengers.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Now let's talk money, because let's be honest, that matters. According to 2022 data, the median salary for commercial pilots, which includes charter, corporate, and instructional flying, is around $93,300. Airline pilots? They're looking at a median of $160,970. But wait, there's more to this story. Corporate pilots at established companies like NetJets or flying for Fortune 500 companies can make serious money. We're talking potential earnings in the $250,000 range. And here's something cool. At smaller corporate operations, you might reach competitive pay faster than you would at a regional airline. But, and this is a big but, airline pilots at major carriers can eventually earn upwards of $475,000 with outstanding retirement benefits and industry-leading job security. So here's the real question. What kind of pilot do you want to be? Do you want to master one type of aircraft and become an expert in high-volume operations? Or do you want variety, where you might fly multiple aircraft types and land at a different airport every week? The truth is, both paths lead to incredible careers. Airline pilots get to fly the biggest, most advanced aircraft in the world. You're transporting hundreds of people safely across continents. You're part of a massive, coordinated system that keeps global commerce moving. And as you build seniority, you gain more control over your schedule. Corporate pilots get something different. Autonomy. You're the entire flight department sometimes. You're making decisions about weather, routing, and passenger needs without layers of oversight. You're building relationships with clients who remember your name and appreciate your professionalism. And you're flying some of the most sophisticated business jets ever built. Here's my take. There's no wrong answer here. Some pilots thrive on the structure and teamwork of airline operations. Others need the variety and independence of corporate flying. And here's something really important. You're not locked in forever. Plenty of pilots start in corporate aviation, build their hours and experience, then transition to airlines. Others go the opposite direction, flying for airlines early in their careers before moving to corporate flying. The best part? The aviation industry needs both. According to recent projections, pilot jobs are expected to grow by 14% over the next decade. Whether you're dreaming of commanding a 787 across the Pacific or flying a Gulfstream to Teterboro, there's a seat with your name on it. So, if you're sitting there wondering which path is right for you, ask yourself these questions. Do I value predictability or variety? Do I want to be part of a large team or operate more independently? Am I chasing the highest earning potential, or do I want lifestyle flexibility earlier in my career? Both paths require the same foundational training: your private pilot license, instrument rating, commercial certificate, and eventually that airline transport certificate at 1,500 hours. The difference isn't in how you get your wings, it's in how you choose to use them. And that's what makes aviation so incredible. Whether you're flying a 737 full of families heading on vacation, or a Citation carrying executives to their next meeting, you're living a dream that millions of people wish they could experience. You're defying gravity, exploring the world, and doing something that truly matters. So dream big, train hard, and remember, the sky isn't the limit when you're already flying through it. Up next, we talk to author J.J. Madison and learn more about his new book, YIKES, 100 Smart Pilots and the Dumb Things They Did, Yet Lived to Tell About Them. AviNation is the leading youth aviation magazine, here to attract, educate, and empower the next generation of aviators. Inside every issue, you'll discover the future of flight through the stories of students, programs, and innovators shaping the skies. And with AviNation's Rising Star program, we're recognizing students with a passion for aviation, celebrating their journey, connecting them with industry sponsors, and fueling their dreams. Got your own aviation story? AviNation would love to hear from you. Check out the website at avinationusa.com. Welcome back to the Future in Flight podcast. On today's recommended reading list, we're diving into YIKES, 100 Smart Pilots and the Dumb Things They Did, Yet Lived to Tell About Them. A book that's not just entertaining, it's potentially life-saving. Author J.J. Madison has compiled years of NASA Aviation Safety Reports into stories that'll make you laugh, cringe, and most importantly, become a better pilot by learning from other people's mistakes. And yes, that exclamation point after YIKES is absolutely intentional, because when things go sideways in the cockpit, you don't whisper, "Yikes," you shout it. Stick around, because we're about to explore why making mistakes might be the best thing that ever happened to your flying career, as long as you learn from them. Let's start with what makes YIKES so different from your typical aviation safety book. This isn't a dry manual about regulations and procedures. These are real stories from real pilots, anonymized of course, who had moments where everything went wrong and they had to figure it out. JJ discovered something fascinating while researching thousands of NASA Aviation Safety Reports.
People learn through stories. And so one of the great things, some of the great things that I've learned from what I've written about and researching the thousands and thousands and thousands of NASA reports that exist on aviationsafetyreportingsystem.gov is that people are fallible and that pilots learn from their mistakes.
Here's how NASA reports work, and this is critical for you to know. If you make a mistake while flying, you can file an anonymous report within 10 days, as long as you didn't do it on purpose, didn't kill anybody or break an airplane, didn't do anything illegal, and haven't been violated for the same thing in the previous 5 years, you're protected. Everything gets anonymized and posted on the website. The brilliant part? Now everyone else can learn from your mistake without having to make it themselves. Let me give you one of JJ's favorite stories from the book. A flight instructor and commercial pilot was ferrying an airplane. He'd been flying all day, didn't get good sleep the night before, woke up at 0:30 for a 6 a.m. departure. He was flying from his home to somewhere in Middle Tennessee. Seems simple enough. So he sets the autopilot, programs the GPS, and thinks, I'll just have a quick 15-minute nap. He wakes up over the Gulf of America. He's completely disoriented. First thing he does, disconnects his headset because he thinks maybe he has a headset problem. Then, as he turns back toward land, reality hits. Okay, I don't have a headset problem. It was me. He doesn't make it to land. He has to ditch the Cessna 310 off the coast of Pensacola. Successfully, I might add. He gets out, uses the seat cushion as a flotation device. Coast Guard drops a life preserver about 50 yards from him, but he can't swim. So he just floats there until a helicopter rescues him 20 or 30 minutes later. Now here's the best part, the part that makes this a true yikes story.
His takeaway was not that he should have gotten adequate sleep, not that he shouldn't have let himself fall asleep at the wheel, and not that he had a successful ditching, but that he needed to learn how to swim.
Now, JJ points out this guy either really has a good sense of humor or just didn't get it. But that's what makes these stories so valuable. You read them and think, I would never make that mistake. And maybe you're right, but maybe you'd make a different one. The point is, you're thinking about scenarios before you encounter them. JJ doesn't just write about other people's mistakes. He shares his own. And he's flown everything from a 19-seat British Aerospace J-32, which he calls the no plane because it had no bathroom, no autopilot, no cockpit door, to 737s, 717s, and regional jets. Recently, JJ had his own yikes moment approaching Reagan National Airport in Washington, D.C. Now, DCA is what pilots call a pilot's airport. It's challenging, small for the number of operations, relatively short runways, right along the Potomac River. They were coming in on runway Tree, the shorter runway because of heavy crosswinds. The approach is spectacular. You fly up the river till you hit the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, bank right, follow the 295 freeway, descending the whole time. You're at 1,000 feet at the bridge, 500 feet at a church near the riverbank, and that church lines up perfectly with runway Tree. JJ and his captain are doing everything perfectly. Beautiful approach. They're just over the church, 500 feet off the deck, when they suddenly realize
We had done everything perfectly except we had forgotten to get the numbers for runway 33. So we're 500 feet off the deck, and we realize suddenly, we don't have the numbers. So, all right, set thrust, flaps 8, go round. That was a yikes moment.
Here's what I love about this story. These are experienced, proficient pilots. This wasn't incompetence. It was the last leg of a 4-day trip, their 16th or 18th leg in 4 days. They were tired. They made a human mistake, but they caught it, executed a go-around, got their numbers, and landed safely the second time. When ATC asked why they went around, they simply said, unstable approach, because it was, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with the go-around.
That's the great takeaway from NASA reports, is you get to increase your aeronautical decision-making skills at the expense of somebody else, not at your own expense.
That's the magic of yikes. You're building experience without the risk. You're learning lessons that could save your life or your passengers' lives without having to make every mistake yourself. So how did Yikes go from a collection of safety stories to a book that's funding flight scholarships and changing lives? JJ had been writing a human factors column for General Aviation News for 6 years. It was the second most popular column online. Then one day he read a news article about Reverend Russell White, a truant officer in East Orange, New Jersey, who caught 5 high school kids skipping school. Reverend White gave him a choice: get suspended or go flying. The kid's first response? You can't fly, you're black. But Reverend White was a pilot in the National Guard. He took those kids up over East Orange, showed them their neighborhood from above, and blew their minds. Then Reverend White did something incredible. He realized he couldn't just leave them inspired. He had to give them a path forward. So he and a friend started Eagle Flight Squadron Incorporated, a flight school in the basement of his church. When JJ heard that story, he wanted to help. He could donate a few dollars, but he wanted to do more.
After about a week, I realized, I've got all these columns. Maybe I could write a book and put the best of them into a book. And then if they sell, maybe I could, provide the school with some scholarship money.
So JJ and his wife created the Victor Kilo Fund. Victor Kilo means 1,000 victories in Greek because it takes about 1,000 little victories to achieve a big goal. They compiled the best stories from his column, published YIKES in November 2024, and started selling copies. In June 2025, they contacted Eagle Flight Squadron with big news. They'd sold enough books to offer a $5,000 flight scholarship. That's enough to cover the entire cost of a private pilot license for one of their cadets. And because Eagle Flight Squadron owns their own aircraft, a 172 and a 152, that money goes directly to getting a young person in the air. JJ says the response was pretty quiet at first, until that check showed up. Then people started paying attention. They're now about to give out a $10,000 scholarship, and they're extending scholarships to other Civil Air Patrol squadrons, flight schools, and STEM programs that are under-resourced, whether they're in rural, suburban, or urban areas. But here's what JJ told me is the other really cool thing about the book.
Every time I talk to people about my book, regardless of where they are in their pilot journey, everybody wants to share a yikes moment with me, because everybody's had a yikes moment.
That's what makes this so powerful. It's not just about reading other people's stories. It's about creating a culture where we can talk openly about our mistakes, learn from them, and help each other become better, safer pilots. Before we wrap up, I have to ask about that exclamation point. As someone who loves grammar and respects punctuation, when I see yikes, I can't help but emphasize it. So I asked JJ if that was intentional.
I did that on purpose, because I'm the same way. You don't go yikes. You go yikes!
Exactly. Because when you're in that moment, when you realize you're over the Gulf instead of Tennessee, where you're 500 feet from landing without your VREF numbers, you're not calmly observing the situation. You're having a visceral, immediate reaction. That exclamation point captures the intensity, the adrenaline, the oh no moment that every pilot experiences at some point. It's honest, it's human, and it reminds us that flying, despite all our training in technology and procedures, still requires constant vigilance. Flying is a perishable skill. You've got to practice. You're going to make mistakes. The smartest people on the planet become, in JJ's words, the stupidest person on the flight deck in their first 40 hours. And even experienced pilots with thousands of hours can forget something critical when they're tired or distracted. The key is learning from those mistakes, yours and everyone else's, so we all keep improving.
Because every NASA report has a takeaway. That's part of the deal.
Here's the bottom line. Yikes isn't just a book. It's a flight simulator for your brain. You get to experience scenarios, think through decision-making, and build your aeronautical judgment without putting yourself or anyone else at risk. JJ compiled these stories from his work on an airline safety committee and years of writing a human factors column. He transformed what could be dry safety reports into engaging, memorable stories. And now, every copy sold helps fund flight scholarships for young people who might not otherwise have access to aviation. You can find Yikes 100 Smart Pilots and the dumb things they did yet live to tell about them at yikesthebook.com. That's Yankee India Kilo Echo Sierra thebook.com. No exclamation point. Get a signed copy directly from JJ or grab it on Amazon as a paperback or Kindle or listen on Audible. And if you want to learn more about the Victor Kilo Fund or support their scholarship work, all that information is at the same website. Now, about JJ, because this guy's story deserves a quick shout out. He didn't start flying until his 30s. He was a Hollywood screenwriter, completely burned out when he met some Tuskegee airmen at an air show in Compton, California. They took him under their wing, literally, and mentored him into a commercial pilot career. He's flown everything from tiny turboprops to 737s, and now he's paying that mentorship forward through his writing and scholarship fund. One ramper at DCA saw JJ in uniform and thought, maybe I can do this too. They're meeting up soon to help him get started. That's representation in action. That's the ripple effect of one person deciding to share their story. So here's my challenge to you. Read Yikes. Learn from these pilots' mistakes. Share your own Yikes moments when it's safe and appropriate. File those NASA reports. Build a culture where we lift each other up, where admitting mistakes makes us stronger, not weaker. Because at the end of the day, we're all in this together, keeping each other safe in the skies. Up next, we take a look at a legendary aircraft that had its test pilot saying a lot spicier words than Yikes, the Bell X-1. vintage aircraft spotlight. Now we're jumping into our time machine. Okay, fine. It's actually just the National Air and Space Museum in D.C. to talk about an aircraft that literally changed everything we know about fast flight. Picture this. It's October 14th, 1947. The Mojave Desert stretches out below, endless and dusty. Up at 23,000 feet, a Boeing B-29 bomber flies steady and level. But here's where it gets wild. Hanging in the B-29's bomb bay isn't a bomb. It's a bright orange rocket plane that looks like a bullet with wings. And inside that rocket plane is a guy with 2 broken ribs who's about to make history. This is the story of the Bell X-1, the aircraft that broke the sound barrier and proved to the world that supersonic flight wasn't just science fiction. So here's the thing about the 1940s. Pilots were dying, like a lot. As planes got faster and faster during World War II, weird stuff started happening when they approached the speed of sound. Controls would freeze up, wings would shake apart, planes would dive and couldn't pull out. Engineers called it compressibility. But pilots, they had a more dramatic name, the sound barrier. And some people genuinely believed it was impossible to break through it, that if you tried to fly faster than sound, your plane would just disintegrate. But the U.S. Army Air Forces, working with this organization called NACA, that's the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, basically NASA's grandparent, they weren't buying the whole impossible thing. They wanted answers. So they teamed up with Bell Aircraft Corporation and said, build us a plane that can punch through the sound barrier and tell us what happens. The Bell engineers needed a shape they knew could handle supersonic speeds. So what'd they pick? A .50 caliber bullet. Seriously, they knew bullets could fly faster than sound all the time without falling apart. So they basically built an airplane shaped like one. About 31 feet long, bright international orange with short, straight wings and this beautiful streamlined fuselage. It looked like something out of Buck Rogers. But here's what made the X-1 special. Instead of propellers or jet engines, it had a rocket engine, or reaction motors XLR-11 to be exact, running on liquid oxygen and alcohol mixed with water. This thing could pump out 6,000 pounds of thrust, which was absolutely bonkers for 1947. The catch? It could only burn for about 2.5 minutes before running dry, so every second counted.
And one of the Air Force's best-known flight test pilots has just set the pace for further research in upper air investigation.
Now let me tell you about the guy they picked to fly this orange bullet. His name was Chuck Yeager, Captain Charles E. Chuck Yeager, U.S. Air Force test pilot, World War II fighter ace. And here's my favorite part, a guy who grew up in West Virginia and didn't even see an airplane until he was a teenager. Talk about proof that you don't need to be born into aviation to make history in it. And Yeager, he named the X-1 Glamorous Glennis after his wife, which honestly is pretty sweet for a plane designed to possibly explode. So October 14th, 1947, Yeager climbs into the cockpit through a side hatch because remember, this thing's shaped like a bullet. And the B-29 takes off with the X-1 tucked underneath. Oh, and did I mention Yeager broke 2 ribs horseback riding just a couple days before? He didn't tell anyone because he thought they'd scrub the flight. He just brought a sawed-off broomstick to help him close the cockpit hatch. That's the kind of determination we're talking about. At 23,000 feet, the B-29 crew releases the X-1. For a few seconds, Yeager's in freefall. Then, he lights each of the 4 rockets, one at a time, gaining speed with each ignition. With all engines burning at full thrust, everything seemed fine. The flight plan called for level flight at Mach 0.097, just shy of the sound barrier. But Yeager kept the rockets burning. The Mach meter needle started bouncing, then it jumped off the scale. The X-1 was going so fast the instruments couldn't keep up. That sound? That's a sonic boom. And on that October morning in 1947, when the X-1 punched through Mach 1.06, about 700 miles an hour, that boom echoed across the Mojave Desert. The first sonic boom ever created by a piloted aircraft in controlled, level flight. Yeager radioed back to the ground crew. The X-1 was handling beautifully. The controls were smooth. Nothing fell off. The so-called sound barrier wasn't a barrier at all. It was just a really interesting physics problem that they just solved. This wasn't just one flight and done. The X-1 flew 78 total missions. On March 26, 1948, just 5 months later, Yeager pushed it even harder, reaching Mach 1.45, nearly 960 miles an hour, at almost 72,000 feet. That was the highest and fastest any human had ever flown at that point. And the data they collected on all those flights? It literally shaped every supersonic aircraft that came after. Think about it. The X-1 program proved that if you design carefully, test methodically, and fly smart, you can break through barriers everyone else says are impossible. The F-16s, the SR-71 Blackbird, the Space Shuttle, modern fighter jets, they all owe something to that little orange rocket plane. Today, glamorous Glennis sits in the Boeing milestones of Flight Hall at the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. You can walk right up to it, see the 4 rocket chambers, the stubby little wings, the name Glamorous Glennis painted on the nose. It's about the size of a small fighter, made of aluminum and steel, and it looks fast, even standing still. Here's what I want you to take away from this. The X-1 wasn't built to carry cargo or drop bombs or win dogfights. It was built purely for research, to answer questions, to push boundaries, to figure out what's possible. That's still happening today, by the way. We've got X-planes testing hypersonic flight, electric propulsion, quiet supersonic technology. Every time someone tells you something's impossible in aviation, remember Chuck Yeager and the Bell X-1. Remember that barriers are meant to be understood, not feared. So the next time you hear a jet break the sound barrier overhead, or you're scrolling through videos of modern fighters pulling insane maneuvers, remember, it all started with a bullet-shaped orange rocket plane and a guy with a broom handle and broken ribs who decided to see what was on the other side of impossible.
This flight marks the first milestone in the supersonic chapter in the history of aviation. And you were there.
And that's going to do it for another episode of the Future in Flight podcast. From airline versus corporate careers, to learning from other pilots' yikes moments, to Chuck Yeager breaking the sound barrier with broken ribs and a broomstick. What a flight we've had today. Here's what I hope you're taking away from this episode. Whether you're dreaming of flying 737s full of passengers or Gulfstreams for private clients, whether you're learning from NASA Safety Reports or studying vintage aircraft that change history, you're part of an incredible community. A community that learns together, grows together, and pushes the boundaries of what's possible. Speaking of community, I need your help to keep this show climbing. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take 30 seconds right now to subscribe to the Future in Flight podcast wherever you're listening. And if you really want to help us reach more aspiring aviators, leave us a review. Tell us what you loved, what you learned, or which story resonated with you. Those reviews help people discover the show and realize that aviation isn't just for the wealthy or the connected. It's for anyone willing to work hard and chase their dreams. You can find links to J.J. Madison's book, YIKES, and more information about everything we discussed today in our show notes. And remember, if you want to dive deeper into any topic we covered, head over to our website where you'll find past episodes, blog articles, and resources to help you on your aviation journey. That's futureinflight.com. Thank you so much for spending this time with us today. Thank you for believing that aviation is for you, no matter where you're starting from. And thank you for being part of this amazing community that's building the future of flight, one episode at a time. I'm Shawn Staerker, and until next time, keep your eyes on the horizon and your dreams in the clouds. We'll see you out there and up there.